Hello, this is Kade, and Star Citizen has a new subcapital for us. Or as I would say, we finally have our Corvette. But before I go into it, allow me to apologize for my voice. I'm still recovering from a flu, and as always I do these things in one take, so please bear with me, I'm very sorry for that. But yeah, we have ourselves the Aegis Hammerhead, and isn't she a beautiful ship? Like, she screams, I am an Aegis ship, I am angry, and I am going to ruin your day. I love it, like I really love it, and I love it even more because this ship is a Corvette. Like, yes, it's not named a Corvette, it's a Corvette. I know what COG says, and I've always disagreed with them. You know, I call a Javelin a light cruiser, I call an Idris a destroyer, I call a Polaris a destroyer escort / motor torpedo boat, and I call the Hammerhead a Corvette. And the reasoning being is that when we're looking at the World War II setting to which they want to mimic in space, the Hammerhead fulfills all the role of a Corvette. It is an escort ship. It is the ship you put next to something to protect it against fighters, bombers, and larger capital class torpedoes which you can probably shoot down. And well, if I look at a Corvette in World War II, it was put next to something they wanted to protect, an Atlantic convoy, and it was meant to stop German U-boats and an occasional plane. I don't know about you, but to me that sounds like this is a Corvette. And also, like, it doesn't have any capital class component on it. And that makes sense, because Corvettes were never considered a capital class ship. They're not a capital class ship. Like, they could be built in pretty much your mom's and pop's shipyard. Because in order to build a Corvette, like anything up to and including destroyers, could be pretty much built in any shipyard capable of building larger commercial vessels. But a Corvette could be built in even, you know, shipyards made for smaller commercial vessels could build a Corvette. Because it's really nothing complicated. These things are not armored, they're not very complex. It's really the minimalistic fighting vessel you can get. And the Hammerhead very much resembles that. You're looking at a ship with a crew of 3 to 9. Of course, 3 being the core operational crew. Like, you know, you command the pilot, your engineer, and they will need 6 more people to man the 6 turrets. 6 turrets with each 4 times size 4 weapons. Oh, that's a lot of firepower. And it gets even better. The Hammerhead has full 360 field of fire coverage. There's not an angle at which you can approach this ship that will not be able to track you with at least 3 turrets. And if you're on a worse angle, it will track you with 5 turrets. If, you know, 20 size 4 weapons pack quite a lot of punch. Like, anything Polaris sized and below is not going to want to take this thing on. Like, the Polaris can take it on with the torpedoes. Like, if the Polaris can get a torpedo salvo with this thing is going to be in trouble. Because like the Polaris, it has large shields. 2 of them, but they're just large shields. So it's not going to withstand a torpedo barrage like that. But if you catch a Polaris like at close range or without its torpedoes and anything below that, they're going to have a really bad day, as this caterpillar down there finds out. And as an added bonus on top of some turrets, we of course have 32 size 3 missiles, because why not? And I know some have been saying like you can change these missiles out for smaller ones. I would not do so, because to me I consider these missiles to be quite ideal against larger bombers. Because a bomber like a Gladiator wants to get him closer, so likely be in the firing range of your turrets. But a Retaliator tends to be capable of more standing off. So being able to send a bunch of missiles after a Retaliator, at least to retaliate against the strike it's going to command, is a nice thing to have. But of course, you know, if you find that your environment demands different loadout, you can probably exchange 32 size 3 missiles for upwards of 64 size 2 missiles, or a combination thereof. And likely you can also put in larger missiles, but we're not sure. So we got a very, very capable weapons loadout. And we got a very capable platform. And we got a very well proven platform. Because that's another very important thing. This ship has been in design or use for 2 centuries. That's a long time for any ship to be around. And that means that these things have been fine-tuned. Fine-tuned to perfection. Everything that's wrong about them has been fixed at some point. Either with a small change or with a complete version overhaul when you're going from version 1 to 2 to 2A to 3 to 4 and onwards. So, very long service history. Very capable platform. By all means the perfect Corvette. How does she stack up to the Polaris then? Well, I think it's fairly clear, and it's also listed in the brochure. They do not really compete with each other. The Hammerhead is a defense ship, defense oriented ship. The Polaris is a strike or an offense oriented ship. So whereas the Polaris will go out and unleash the torpedo salvo, the Hammerhead will stick with the fleet and screen it against fighters, bombers and large torpedoes. That's the role of the Hammerhead, and that's why it's such a lovely ship. And that's also why I think the Polaris is going to be a very, very hard sale after this. Because looking at it, the Polaris is in a really difficult spot, in my opinion. Like, yes, it's a lot cheaper than an Idris, but I believe that in a operational combat use, those torpedoes are going to be a massive, massive financial anchor on that ship. Because yes, large torpedoes do a lot of damage, but they also cost a fortune to fire. Like, make no mistake, guided weapons of any sort are extraordinarily expensive, even today. Now, if you're looking at a bit of a warfare scenario, quite often the platform can look like a bargain compared to the weapons they're firing. Like, sure, maybe not in one mission, but over, a couple of sorties or a couple months of operation, it's not unusual for a platform to be capable of deploying more weapons than in value than the platform itself is worth in value. And that's an issue you're going to have with the Polaris. And not only that, the Polaris is a new ship, so it's going to have more issues with it. The supply chains are going to be more strained. Spare parts are going to come only from RSI, and RSI is going to be focused, of course, on building new ships and not so much on supplying spare parts. Whereas with the Hammerhead, because it's so old, you can get salvage parts, you can get parts from Aegis with probably got inventories stacked throughout UE space to the rafters with these things because they've been around so long. And you also have the third market suppliers, because these things have been modified to do just about anything. Observation platforms, hospital ships, you name it. So it's going to be a very large third market supply for the ship and parts for it as well. Maybe even parts that just replace the original parts from Aegis for the same roles, because it's so common that it becomes interesting to invest into it. So the Polaris, because of the Hammerhead, is now in a really difficult position. Like, it has a very powerful strike package, but that strike package comes at such a high cost that I don't see how it's gonna fit in anymore. Like, before it was a little like it was the option you had in that size range. Like, yeah, the Hammerhead is a bit smaller. It might grow, we never know, but I think it's quite further along in development, so it won't probably do that anymore. But you never know. But like, the Polaris, it was there and it was unique in that size and the role it has, but if I look at it now, I just don't see it work anymore for most organizations. It's only for really large organizations that use them as really big bombers, pretty much, that's what they're very good at. If you're in a smaller org, like I say, if you're in a smaller org and you were planning around building around the Polaris, I would seriously consider giving up a Polaris and getting the Hammerhead. If you're a military org, especially because, like, yeah, the Polaris can land one fighter and you can probably resupply it. the one advantage it has, and the strongest strike ability against a capital ship. But everything else, the Hammerhead just does better and cheaper. So, yeah, the Polaris is not in a good spot anymore now. I'm curious to see, of course, we will have the sale go on. Maybe they'll have some changes to the Polaris that will make it again more feasible in comparison. But right now it's in a really, really tricky spot because the Hammerhead is just such a good ship. As I briefly pointed out, like the use-wise scenarios, of course, it is a escort ship, and it means it's going to be a large combat ship for every single organization that's expecting that it can have a combat scenario. So if you're transporting goods, if you got a mining operation, if you got your colonies, if you got science ships floating about, you name it, this is the combat ship you want in your org, because it's going to be capable of protecting you against a lot of bad things. Now, I think before this ship came along, pirates looked like a lot more of a nicer business proposition than it looks now. I mean, this artwork here shows it fairly clearly, like this caterpillar is having a really, really bad day. Because if a caterpillar is going to come across a Hammerhead, it's going to lose. Like, it's not going to have a chance, it's going to get obliterated. And the same like with pirates. So in order, as soon as a Hammerhead is present with your operation, the investment and risk needed for pirates to attack your operation increases substantially because of how capable a platform it is, and because of how difficult it will be to take down with just smaller ships. Like, in order to take this on, you're going to look at a very coordinated bomber strike, but even that, it's got the capability of shooting down so much incoming firepower, both in the ships as in the weapons themselves. Perhaps it's going to be really costly to take one of these things on, and cost is everything in the pirate's life as well. Like it or not, pirating is a business, so you're looking at your investments and what you're going to take. So if you got a convoy with 2 Hammerheads, flying about it in an escort, and you got a convoy with just a couple of fighter escorts, you know which convoy is going to get targeted, even if your convoy transports more valuable goods. The risks are too high to engage it, so they'll probably go for another one. So yeah, it's going to be amazing. And even, of course, if you're a pirate, it's also going to be absolutely amazing, because flying one of these into a convoy that has only fighter escorts, you're going to obliterate them. And then you're going to park this thing next to whatever capital, maybe the whole E, you're going to park it next to it. And you have a nice conversation with the captain. You say, like, as you've seen, I just obliterated your escorts. If you do not fancy being next, I strongly, strongly suggest that you surrender immediately. Or you can just tell them, like, you can perhaps ask them to surrender the entire ship or surrender some of the cargo, but it's going to be a very menacing opponent. And I think it's going to be able to do all of that on a fairly decent budget, as I discussed before. So yeah, if I come across very enthusiastic about this, a bit like over rambly, then I'm sorry, but I'm just, to me it is the most interesting combat ship that has been launched in a long time, because it's so good. I mean, looking at this thing now for a couple of hours, and I just cannot find a flaw with it. I just cannot find a flaw with it anyway. It's built to do a purpose, and it does that purpose so well, and that purpose is so useful in such a wide range, for such a wide range of people. It's just amazing. And to top it all off, because it's so old, people have been modifying the things. You can modify the ship to do so many other things if you really want to. And it's not going to be like, oh, well, I'm buying a combat ship and throw all the combat ship stuff away. No, because these things are going to be in combat all the time. There is a market for all the parts that you don't want anymore. So if you're going to transform your Hammerhead into a hospital ship, people will want those turrets from you. They will want that component. They will want those missile launchers. They will want everything from you, because they will likely have blown one of theirs up. So yeah, I think it's really an amazing ship, and it's going to fit in extraordinarily well with a really wide variety of organizations within Star Citizen. Because the only reason I think of that you don't want one is if you're only going to be operating in the most secure of secure environments, you know, or you're just with a few people and you're just on your Carrack exploring, you know, things like that. But as soon as you're in a larger organization, then it's going to be extraordinarily useful. And if you're in a smaller organization around combat and you have a Polaris, I would seriously consider trading it in for a Hammerhead, because operationally it's going to be a lot cheaper, and I think in most scenarios a lot more effective. Because let's face it, if you got a smaller organization like 30-40 people, you're not going to be targeting capital ships. That's not going to be your mission profile. You're not going to get the contracts to do that. So that enormous strike package of the Polaris is nice to have, but you're not going to put it to use, and if you're going to put it to use, it's going to be so expensive. So yeah, I love it. I got one in the fleet, and as I really, if you were looking for a large combat ship that's multi-crew, and you're looking at where your friends, like, get this ship. There's no limit on the numbers. It's amazing. It's a concept sale. It's gonna last a week, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's capable, and it's got 2 centuries of use. I mean, they even took it out of use because Aegis were the evil guys, and they brought it back into use. That just tells you that the design was so good that in the decades that it was not, you know, being bought by the Navy again, they were unable to design and build a new ship in decades, unable to design and build a new ship that was as capable as this thing was. That's how good of a ship this thing is, lore-wise. Yeah, it's amazing. Anyhow, I hope it has been somewhat informative, and yeah, I know, sorry if I sound like a bit too enthusiastic about it. I can't help it. I love it. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope it was informative. Maybe you learned something from it. And I may consider doing another one of these on the Hawk, but I'm a bit on the fence on that one again, because you know, I really like my large ships. To me, my small ships are really things to give away to others. You know, like, oh, I need pilots. You can fly that thing. I like my capital ships far more. And yeah, it's not a capital on paper, but it's a Corvette. And a Corvette is not a capital, but it's fucking awesome. Yeah, I'll see you again next time. Thank you so much. Carde out.